Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to episode 69 of the How to Live Slow podcast. It's so great to have you here with me again today. Today I have got Harmony from Harmony Inspired Health. I'm really excited to introduce you to her. We're going to be talking about a new modality, something I haven't spoken about on the podcast before, and it's very closely linked with slow and cyclical living. It's called Ayurveda. You may have heard of it before. It's a lifestyle philosophy. It actually originates in India and it guides you to understand yourself at a deeper level. My guest today, as I said, is Harmony Robinson-Stagg from Harmony Inspired Health. And she is going to give us an overview of what Ayurveda is, how we can use it to live a life more attuned to nature and to our natural selves. So Harmony is an Ayurveda and Integrative Health Practitioner, and she's also a registered nurse, a pilates and barre instructor, a Reiki practitioner, and she has lots of other qualifications, but we're going to be talking about Ayurveda today, which is really exciting because actually I've heard of Ayurveda. I've looked into it a little bit before, like when I was a teenager, but to be honest, I can't believe that I haven't spoken more about it or had other people talk about it on the podcast because it really is so aligned with that slow living philosophy that I'm all about. So yeah, I'm really excited. Now, before I introduce you to Harmony, I just wanted to let you know that I'm running another round of Martyr to Matriarch. It is coming up. I'm currently enrolling at the moment. Today, publishing this is the Wednesday, the 6th of October. We start on the 18th of October, which is a Monday. Although as soon as you get in there next week, there will be some, other little videos and things in there to get you started, some like welcome things for you to have a look through. I know a lot of people missed out on Martyr to Matriarch when I ran it earlier this year, and I did 2 rounds, and I know that there were quite a few people who were still interested to do it, and I've had quite a number of questions about when I'll be running it again. And I've made a few changes to it because I realized that a lot of people said that they wanted to have a little bit of one-on-one time with me as well as just in the group, just for sharing some more personal side of stuff, which is totally understandable. So I have added in Voxer coaching where you don't need to come up with an hour to meet with me on Zoom to have a one-on-one. You just add me to Voxer and we can have little voice chats throughout the month, which is really cool. It's much more convenient for mums. It's a really great way of doing coaching. And in fact, I've actually been coached in that format, which I found really, really useful because, you've always got those thoughts of like, oh, next time I have a chat with her, I'm going to mention this or that, or I'm going to ask her about this or that. You can do it right then and there, and you can send it to me and then I can reply to you when I get a chance, throughout the day as well. So it's a really convenient way of doing our side of the program. So if you want to find out more about Martyr to Matriarch, you can find the link in the show notes to this episode or over on my website. It's either in your podcast player or go to my website, howtoliveslow.com. And if you get stuck, just send me a DM on Instagram or even Facebook is also fine. Yeah, so if it's something that you're thinking about, I would love to have you in the program. So yeah, all right, well, let's meet Harmony and talk all things Ayurveda. Cool, so I'm here with Harmony. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm looking forward to having this chat with you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, why don't you tell us a bit about you? I'm really interested to talk with you about Ayurveda and integrative health.
So I'm an Ayurveda and integrative health practitioner on the Gold Coast, but I do see women all over the globe. So I think with the pandemic, actually, my business has really spread itself. So that's been one positive out of it. But I'm also a registered nurse as well. So I do combine my knowledge in Ayurveda and natural medicine with my medical background. And I see women mostly for hormonal imbalances and gut health. Of late, I've also seen a lot of women around sort of the areas of burnout and stress and anxiety. But as we know, they all sort of, gut health and hormones and stress and anxiety, they all really sort of go together. And yeah, so that's what I do. And I got into Ayurveda. I mean, growing up, I was always exposed to natural health. Like, I grew up with a very holistic parents. We would eat a lot of, like, homegrown organic food before it was trendy. I grew up riding horses, very active lifestyle. And we did have a lot of sort of Ayurvedic practices in my childhood, but I didn't know that's what they were. And it wasn't until I started studying Ayurveda, Mum's like, yeah, we used to do this and that. And yeah, we even used to get the Ayurvedic toothpaste and all this. And I just, but didn't know that's what it was growing up. But it was just very much that holistic lifestyle. And then I grew up and I went to uni, moved to the Gold Coast. So I'm originally from northern New South Wales, so down near Byron Bay. And then I moved to the Gold Coast when I was 17 for uni. So I was a bit younger for my year. And with that comes that sort of independence, a bit of change of lifestyle. I was on the Gold Coast, so I was going out partying a lot more, and sort of lost my way a little bit with sort of that whole lifestyle type thing. And then I eventually finished uni, nursing, went and did my nursing and met my husband, and we had twins. We had kids, obviously twins. And then after I was pregnant, I really got burnt out myself. So I was still trying to do all the things. I was still nursing. I was a personal trainer, taught yoga, pilates. So I was teaching classes all over town. I was studying, and I found myself with this great big burnout, and I was just really fatigued. I had gut issues going on. I was constantly bloated, looked pregnant after I was pregnant. And I would get asked at work, oh, are you having another baby? And I'd be like, no, I'm just really bloated. And I had all these hormonal imbalances going on. And so I basically sort of looked at my lifestyle and decided I really need to take charge of it, and I needed to address the stress and the burnout, and I needed to address my whole life and sort of turn it upside down a little bit and come back to myself and my health. I did seek sort of professional advice with my gut and was sent to dietitians and gastroenterologists and general practitioners and all of the people, but nothing really seemed to work. I went on the FODMAP diet and under guidance of the dietitian, and I got sort of even more bloated and all of these things. So I decided I really needed to sort of take control of my own health and my own life and really find out, what's going to resonate and work for me. And through my yoga teacher training, I'd heard of Ayurveda and even prior to that, like I said, and I was always sort of drawn to it, but I hadn't really gone down that path and really sort of looked deeply into it yet. But something was sort of telling me to, expose yourself again to Ayurveda. There could be an answer here. I think when you get into these sort of health crises yourself, you're trying to search for the answers. And so that's sort of when I really started looking into Ayurveda and adopting sort of the Ayurvedic lifestyle. And I was just fascinated with it and how much it changed my life and how simple it is, yet how we have forgotten it in this modern world. We're so, health really is simple, but we've made it so complicated. And so I sort of just got back to the basics with health and really, just adopted and just love this Ayurvedic lifestyle so much that I went and studied it full time, did an advanced diploma in Ayurvedic medicine, and decided that this is really something I wanted to share with the world.
Amazing. I love that story. And how cool that, you grew up experiencing what that health would have been and then returned back to that and not even really realizing. So something was really calling you to this work, really, wasn't it? All the time.
Absolutely. And I obviously went to uni and did nursing and become a nurse, and I've worked in sort of the emergency departments, surgical theatres and surgical wards and all of that. And it was great, and I'm still nursing, but I'm nursing as sort of more of a nurse educator or a lifestyle retreat. So I still do have that as part of me, but I really saw a great big, I guess, gap in health care And so I thought it would just be amazing to really integrate the two and to really bridge that gap, to bring the wisdom of Ayurveda with sort of like our modern medicine, so that we can give people the best platform to really heal and understand and know themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you that the health, like our health and well-being, like it has been totally overcomplicated, hasn't it? So yeah, it's really,
Yeah.
really valid point. So can you explain a little bit about what Ayurveda actually is, what it means, and what an Ayurvedic lifestyle is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word, and Aya, the first part of the word, it translates to life or longevity, and Veda means science, knowledge, or study of. So it translates to the science of life and longevity. And Ayurveda is one of the world's oldest holistic and integrative health systems. So it originated in India like over 5,000 years ago, before there was sort of written text. It was passed down through the oral route, and then eventually it was sort of written in the Vedas, it was documented and first discovered in the ancient texts of wisdom, the Vedas, but it was written on palm leaves because obviously paper wasn't around then. Now it's printed in the Vedas in big books. But yeah, so it's been tried and tested over many, many thousands of years, and the wisdom of Ayurveda is relevant now more than ever. And like I said, our health system and how we perceive our health has become so complicated, when it really should be basic. It should be like just understanding who we are. See, Ayurveda really recognizes that we're all very individual and complex beings. So we have these individual needs. So it really calls us back to ourself and to start to understand ourselves on a deeper level. And it has this really beautiful and simple philosophy that can be applied to our everyday life. And it looks at the holistic sort of side of health, as in our physical body, our mind, psychology, spirituality. It has like really aligns with nature and the circadian rhythm and how we work within nature. I think these days we as humans have really separated ourselves from nature and the natural cyclical rhythms of nature, but we are actually part of it, and we forget that, and that's where a lot of our sort of health sort of issues can come from.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm all for the cyclical living side of life. Like, I really find it fascinating when everybody on a particular day will say, "Oh, I didn't sleep very well last night." You're like, "Ah, well, it was a full moon," and people think, "Oh, sure, like it can't be that." But actually, yeah, we're part of nature, so of course it's going to be affecting us, or whatever. Like other examples, there's so much of it. Like, that energy of spring that we've all just experienced, like a big boost of like, all right, I'm ready to get out and get active again, because we are essentially animals. Like, we're emerging. That's so cool.
And it wasn't until electricity is an amazing thing. It's let us do so much and, around the world. But at the same time, it was electricity that brought in that artificial light. People having so much issues with insomnia and hormonal imbalances these days. And it's because we've really, we're out of tune with that circadian rhythm. So instead of going to bed at a reasonable time, we're using electricity, we're using lights, we're using our computers until midnight. And then we're going to bed super late and then wanting to get up late. Whereas, in the olden days, I'm talking prior to electricity, you would go to bed when the sun went down or just after it, because you'd just be around candlelight at the very best, and then you'd be waking up with the sun, and your body naturally adapts to those rhythms, and you would be in this sort of beautiful circadian rhythm and your whole biorhythm of your body. And therefore, when you're living in the cyclical way of being according to nature, your hormones are naturally going to be balanced. When we talk about hormonal imbalances, we talk about the difference between our stress hormones and our sex hormones. But when we allow our body to align with this natural rhythm, they're naturally going to be in balance. But now in the modern world, we're so far removed from that. There's been so much, women's health issues that are sort of being brought to light, and hormonal imbalance, insomnia, all of the things. So yeah, it's really interesting when we really peel back the layers.
Yeah, it really is. So you were saying just before about how we're all so unique and different, and but also you're the same. So is that where the doshas come from? I've heard of the doshas before. I actually think that, yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience as you growing up in a small town near Grafton, so
Oh yeah.
northern New South
Yeah,
Wales, and then
yeah.
moved to the Gold Coast. Completely just went off, not off the rails, but partying a lot. But yeah, I do remember always going to the health food shop and getting right into health and wellness stuff. So I have heard of the doshas, but I totally forget what they all mean.
Yeah.
That was a little side note, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it definitely, yeah, it does definitely imply the doshas to a certain degree. I
Doshas.
mean, when people first hear of Ayurveda, they're attracted to the doshas because you can do the quizzes online that show your mind body type, and people love to learn that kind of stuff and are interested in learning about themselves, especially when a little quiz is involved.
Yeah.
So it definitely sort of does align with that. So Ayurveda empowers people to really get to know themselves and to make their own choices relative to the context of their own life. And so whilst, Ayurveda, as I spoke about Ayurveda combines the theory and concepts of physical health, psychology, spirituality, nutrition, lifestyle medicine, herbology, and all of the things, it does also follow a set of fundamental concepts, and the doshas are one of those fundamental concepts. So, but I guess the number one thing would be the 5-element theory, because our doshas are made up of the elements. The doshas are a concept to explain the elements.
Okay.
So, and when I'm talking about elements, I'm talking about ether, like space, air, fire, water, and earth. And then as sort of an Ayurvedic practitioner, when we're looking at the elements, we're not talking about their literal translation like we do in, our, like, it's so hard for the Western mind because when we talk about fire, we think fire, but it's talking about like heat and the qualities of fire, like transformation. It's also talking about passion and drive and all of these. And so the doshas are a concept and are made up of the elements. And like you were talking about, the doshas are vata, pitta, and kapha. And so a lot of people believe that, when they do the dosha quiz, they go, oh, I'm vata or I'm pitta, and they get really attached to that dosha. And so I always like to teach my students and clients about the 5 elements rather than just the doshas, because people can become very attached to that as who they are. Like it's their mind body type, and they can't stray from that. But as a matter of fact, we have all 3 of the doshas within us, just in varying degrees. And often when you do a quiz online, you're doing your Vakruti dosha, which means your imbalanced state. So it can change depending on the season, the weather, the people you're hanging out with, the foods you ate that day. Your dosha will be influenced by external factors. So the quiz that you do is your dosha in that time and moment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do they each mean? So I vaguely remember that one of them is like you don't burn off your food as fast, so you don't want to be that one.
Kapha.
I mean, yeah. I just remember that probably that was like my small memory from high school, back when I cared about whether I was losing weight or not.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So the vata is governed by the ether and air elements. So a vata dosha, when we're looking at a vata body type, so you can have like a different dosha in your mind type as your body type as well. So they interplay and they can surface in different ways within us, in our personality or body. So the vata body type is generally like a tall, thin, slender person, like fine bones, or they can be really, really small, as in really short and fine and petite. They often have, because they're governed by like the ether and air elements, they can get a lot of dryness. So they can have dry skin, dry, brittle hair, curly, wavy-ish hair that's very brittle. Fingernails might crack, but they can also get a lot of like gas and bloating in their stomach and poor digestion because they have a lot of that air element. They can get dry stools, so a lot of constipation, arthritis, sort of the dry, crumbly joints as they age.
Yeah, right.
But they are very, very creative. They're very social. They like to talk because Vata governs movement. So if you think about air and the wind moving, and like sometimes it can be subtle, but sometimes it can be real, like a cyclone, right? It can be really crazy and full on. So they can be very erratic, like they can change like the wind. They often will have like heaps of wonderful ideas and be like, I'm going to do this and that and all of the things. But then they can't really focus on one thing. And then they're like, oh no, off to the next thing. Like they can get bored easy. They don't love a set of rules. They don't like to be constrained. They like to sort of be free, like the ether. So that's sort of like the Vata mind body type. And then we've got the Pitta, which is the fire and water element. And they can be really strong and sort of muscular sort of physique. They can get really hangry, like hungry, angry if they don't eat. They've got like a fast metabolism. They sort of like burn their food quite quickly because they've got that fire heat. They've also got a lot of passion and drive. They make really good CEOs or like company directors, entrepreneurs. They are really, when they're not so balanced, they can tend to overwork and burn themselves out. They can also become very have sort of snappy, aggressive sort of moments when they're not in a balanced state, or be very fiery natured or very judgmental. But yeah, they can also be, again, like we think of that fire element, they can also be really transformational humans, and they can be really passionate and really driven and really inspiring as well. So it's just all of the different qualities. It's just whether that dosha is imbalanced or not.
Yeah, right.
And then the Kapha is the last one. So Kapha is more of the earth element. It's earth and water. And they really govern that stability in the structure. So in the body, Kapha represents, like, say, the bones and all of the solid structure of the body. They are more the ones that tend to be overweight because they can be very, like that earth element, that heavy, static. Sometimes they need that motivation. They can often, especially in winter, want to sort of retrieve at home and just sit down and not do a lot. They're a little bit slower to move, but when they're balanced, they're actually really fantastic endurance athletes because they have stamina, they have endurance, and they're really lovely friends. Like, they're very nurturing and caring and really kind. So they're always, someone that you can sort of lean on their shoulder. They're that really solid support. So they're really beautiful natured people. When they're not balanced, they can become sometimes a little bit obsessive, or they don't handle change that well, that they can sort of be stuck in their way a little bit. So yeah, that's the sort of overview of the doshas.
Yeah, amazing. I can see how, you could get attached to that's my personality, but actually you have a little bit of all of those, and it depends on, again, like you said, the season or what's going on in your life. So fascinating. Yeah,
absolutely.
So what do we do to use those? Like, is there, do we use that in a lifestyle? Like, I think you call it the Ayurvedic, I can't say that word properly, sorry. The Ayurvedic lifestyle routine. Is that what you call it? Is that
how Yeah, absolutely. So Vata being more like of that ether air element, like floaty and erratic, they need a lot more grounding. So when we're doing sort of a routine that's going to nourish Vata, we want it to be sort of like a really grounding routine. So they need some, like meditation can be really important for the Vata dosha at the end of the day, just to really settle them down. Abhyanga, which is like a warm oil self-massage, which you can do daily. That's really good for Vata because it calms down the central nervous system, which, Vata governs that central nervous system. So we want to calm Vata in that way, but also because they're prone to that dryness, their dry skin. And then when we're looking at food, we would give a Vata sort of nourishing diet would be more warmed, cooked foods, because they have the tendency to bloating and gas with that air element, and their digestion can be really up and down. It can change a lot because of that erratic sort of changeability and movement in Vata. Just an easy to digest, cooked, warm, sort of grounding, root vegetables, all of those things really serve Vata. And then Pitta, like I mentioned mentioned when I was explaining the doshas, they have so much drive in them that they can have that tendency to overwork, but to the point where they really burn themselves out. So we do need to bring in a lot more of those cooling elements and make sure that in their lifestyle, they're having fun and not outside of work activities and not being like competitive sport, even though they're amazing at competitive sport because they will win, but like make sure that they're having enough fun in their life. Yeah. And sometimes like if they are like have that tendency to heat and feel really hot, a lot of water sports are really freeing for them. Even just going for a walk in the fresh air, in nature, going for a swim in the ocean, like really connecting to nature is amazing for them. And being outside, as long as it's not too hot, obviously, and it's going to overheat them, is really good for them. And they do need to, obviously when it comes to exercise, they will probably go out and go hard and be quite competitive and hard on themselves. But if they can just pull it back a little bit and enjoy the exercise, it's actually really important for them to move their body and to get some of their frustrations and feelings out. And a good way of doing that is through movement, as long as they don't push that boundary. And then, so a diet for them would be sort of more cooling foods. Mm-hmm. And then kapha, they sometimes need a little bit more fire, so they need a little bit more of that motivation. They need to sort of have a bit of a routine that inspires them to get up and move, to go out and to do things. And going back to the pitta person, they love structure, they love a routine, and they stick to it really, really well. Like if I have a pitta client, especially for like say it's a cleanse client or any of my clients really, and I give them a set like routine to do or a meal plan to follow or herbs or whatever it might be, they will stick to it and they'll be like, yes, done. Whereas a vata, you have to keep sort of reining them back in, pulling them in, being like, and then a kapha person, you might be like, oh, have you started and implemented what we spoke about? And they'll be like, yeah, well, I'm getting there, and you're like, no, let's do this. Yeah. So, yeah. And so a kapha person, because they have more of that earth element, that sort of heavy static sort of element within them, they need a diet that's lighter. Mm-hmm. So and easy to digest, because they can have that sluggish digestion. So not raw foods per se, but just lighter sort of cooked meals.
So fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
You're so welcome.
Cool. So what, if you wanted to explore a bit of more of this, like where do you start? Obviously it's not with one of those online quizzes.
No, I mean, they're always a good start. They're they're fascinating, as in it's good to always, I guess, just to get to know yourself, but just know that that's not Ayurveda. Like it doesn't start and end with the dosha quiz. So, but it can be interesting because you're asking a lot of questions about yourself and it just gives you a lot of insight. Sometimes they're hard to answer because you're like, oh, never really thought about that. But yeah, where you could start is, I have an Intro to Ayurveda online program, which is completely self-paced, and it shares the basics sort of Ayurveda, the foundations. We go into Ayurvedic psychology and philosophy and nutrition and dinacharya. So that's like a really good basic way to start to learn about Ayurveda. And I also run Ayurveda Alchemist, which is a 6-month program that is an accredited program to become a certified Ayurveda lifestyle and wellness coach. So I'm currently, in the middle with my first little cohort at the moment. It's amazing. It's awesome. And then, my next round will be next year.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So your website, you've got lots of resources we can come and check out. So it's really great for hormones, gut health, emotional well-being, you're maintaining weight, if that's a thing that you're focusing on, but just it's everything in your life. It's like you said, that's mind-body connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once you start to understand how your mind and body works, you can sort of adapt it to anything that you need. Like when you start to work in that realm, it just is a great insight into your mind-body function.
Yeah, amazing. I'm personally really excited to learn a little bit more about the cyclical side of living. So I'll be having a chat with you afterwards about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. So your website, can you just tell everyone, and obviously I'll put it in the show notes and any of the links that we've talked about. But what is it?
harmonyinspiredhealth.com.au, and on Instagram I'm Harmony Inspired Ayurveda, and Facebook's Harmony Inspired Health.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.